What's up, Logan? Welcome to the Dad Edge, my friend. Good to see you.
Larry, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Same, man. Like, hey, any guy who's raising young men, especially all three of yours, four of
Yeah,
mine. Like, that's no easy task. Tell me about your boys.
yeah. Um, so my oldest is 9. His name is Declan. He's very
Cool name.
stereotypical first child. He's overachieving. He's worried about his other siblings. He's constantly trying to follow the rules. Generally makes good grades and tries to just keep it between 10 and 2. Very,
Nice.
very traditional first child. My second is McCoy. He's 7, and we joke that McCoy is the most interesting person we know. My wife Jessica and I. Even as a 4 or 5 year old, he doesn't feel like he's from this planet. He's just on a whole other wavelength in almost every way, and he seems to have like the iconic Steve McQueen cool factor.
Yeah.
Even if I'll give you an example. He's not very good at football, but he loves it. But he doesn't know or won't even acknowledge that he's not very good at football. Like he's like, yeah, I'm one of the best kids on the team, and the confidence is pretty incredible. My little guy Fletcher is 4, and he's bringing up the rear. He's a tiny human with a big heart and big ambitions, and he'll throw punches first and ask questions later.
That's awesome, man. So he plays, you said he's 7, right?
Yeah,
Is he
yeah.
playing tackle? Playing tackle?
No, flag football.
Flag football. And he loves it, huh?
He loves it. He enjoys it. He can barely catch the ball, but he thinks it's the greatest.
That's so cool, man. After this podcast, give me your address. I'll put something in the mail for you for him. My son, who's 15 now, he started playing football when he was 8. And he started playing tackle football at 8, and he struggled his first year, but he loved it. The same thing, but he wasn't getting any playing time, which really started to wear on him. And he decided he came to a crossroads of like, do I want to throw in the towel and be done with this? I'm working so hard. I'm not getting any playing time. And he stuck it out, and it turned out to be a great year. And here he is, 7 years later, still playing the game. He plays for JV and varsity, but he wrote a book called Never Give Up No Matter What. And it's all about his journey with football. And, and he wrote it when he was 8, and then we published it when he was 10. And, but I can pop that in. It's a kid's book. And
Yeah,
if you think he'd like that, we'll put one in the mail for you.
absolutely. Yeah, McCoy's learning to read, so I'm sure he would
Yeah.
enjoy it. That's incredible, man. Your 8 year old wrote a book. So media is in your family.
I've written a few books, and I think he just was like, to be real honest, like if you really dive into it and you're dedicated to it, it's really not that hard. Amazon has made it insanely easy for literally anybody to write a book. But he took some paper together and colored and kind of did his story on construction paper, and I was like, man, this is really cool and really inspiring. We should make this into a book. And then we molded the message a little bit and sent it off to an illustrator. They did a great job, and then it was a book. So, but yeah, it's all about him and his journey.
That's fantastic. What position's he playing?
So on JV, he plays center. He's also the long snapper. And then they have him on defense. They play him on defense as much as they can within the rules here. But he's a linebacker. And then on varsity, he's on special teams.
Man, some
And what,
hardworking positions. I
yeah,
love long snapper. In my opinion, is the best job in the world.
it really is. My wife and I were talking about, we're like, man, like he could get a scholarship for long snapper because it's such a critical position. And quite frankly, most people just don't even pay attention to that position. But he's been doing long snapper ever since he was like 10. So he's really learned it pretty well, but we're hoping he gets a scholarship out of it. But enough
Yeah,
about me and my family. I'd love to hear about your third little guy.
yeah. Fletcher, he is a wild man. He's smaller, lighter than the rest, and he's as scrappy as can be, and sort of never lets a moment be dull. He's bringing some level of comedy or trying to get the group to laugh or be silly. He's a real joy, and he won't give me kisses anymore. He's like definitely becoming a big kid, and he's like I have to earn it. I have to coax him into it. He like does not want to be the baby in the family.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's so funny about birth order. A lot of people, it's like the first one is kind of like the young adult. You said Declan, right?
Yeah.
By the way, hats off to you, man. Your boys have got really, really cool names, without a doubt.
Thank you. My wife, I'm sure, had most to do with it.
Well, my wife and I's agreement was we're not naming one of them Larry. Like we're not gonna do that to them. We want them to have a prom date. So, but yeah, that was our agreement. But so, are you guys having any more, or is three
We're
it?
done. I'm surgically done.
Surgically done and
Yeah,
got
we
the
feel very
snippety snip.
fulfilled. We feel fulfilled. We have two giant dogs, and we feel like our family is here.
That's cool, man. And you're married to Jessica. How long you guys been married?
Man, next week, Monday, will be 13 years.
Wow, that's awesome, man. So you guys got to probably get to know each other for what 3 or 4 years before starting having kids.
Yeah, we met each other. She was 18, I was 22, and we've been together every single day since then. It was
How'd you guys meet?
it's a beautiful journey. We went to Loyola Marymount University, which is a very small school, and so um, it's not a coincidence that I would meet a really good-looking blonde girl. That's cool.
Yeah, so my wife is Jessica as well. I was 21 and she was 18 when we met, and we met in college as well. So your story and mine are kind of eerily similar, minus we have a fourth one as the caboose and not the third.
Yeah,
Um, so tell me about your business. I mean, you're leading a radically large organization, a very successful organization, which I think gives us a lot of context for where this conversation is going to go. But I want you to share that as well.
yeah, and it's a real pleasure to be able to talk about it because it has been so um, ingrained in my life, and it has shaped me as a boy. I started it in 2006 with my partner Jason, and I didn't know anything. I was still going to school at the time, and we were just hard workers that kept a paper to-do list, and we knew that we worked very well together. He's wildly analytical. He's an attorney by trade. He knows finance and accounting, and I really focused on the operational aspects of whatever it was that we were doing together. And we started and failed so many times, but our passion was media and entertainment, and we had this thesis that if we could surround ourselves and build businesses where there are passion points, we will always have a customer and we'll always have the ability to sell something. And music is very clearly a passion point for so many people in so many different ways, in the way that they consume it and how they consume it and how it makes them feel and how it makes them remember. And as we started to be successful in that arena, we said, look, this passion point concept can be moved to other aspects of business. So we went and bought businesses where we believed that we could connect these passionate communities with content and commerce and bundle them all together so that they can be a flywheel on top of each other. So we bought a company called YogaWorks because yoga is definitely a passion point for people. It's not only their form of exercise, it's their form of therapy. It's how they define themselves in a lot of ways. And we bought a company called Eastern Mountain Sports and Bob's Stores. and people that love the outdoors and like to climb and kayak and ski. That's a big part of their life, and generally they identify as one of those people. And the communities are rich, and I think that most people are looking to feel like they're part of something, and they're fit within a community. And so we've continued to build that thesis across media, entertainment, sports, and wellness.
That's really creative and very unique. I haven't heard anything quite like that. As far as how big is your company? How many people do you have working for you? And I'm just trying to get some context of, quite frankly, how in demand you really are if you allowed yourself availability and access.
We have over 1,200 employees at this point.
1,200 employees?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I have 100. And
Yeah.
I can't even imagine 12. I can't imagine 12x that. Like even at 100, I'm like, I was looking at our roster and the people that, help us lead and help us do this mission. And I'm like, man, I was like, I never thought we'd be at 100, ever. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I couldn't imagine, something bigger. I mean, I'm sure we will get bigger over the years, but like 1,200 people, that's a lot. And so I imagine you could work 24 hours a day if you really wanted to, and probably never feel caught up, never feel, like you've closed all the loops or anything like that. What is your day to day in the workplace like?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we could spend a lot of time talking about this. Um, well, currently I am the chief executive of our yoga business, YogaWorks. Um, it struggled out of the pandemic to find the right product market fit. It was a publicly traded giant entity pre-pandemic, and we bought it sort of as it went bankrupt and then into the pandemic. So I've been focused on just finding the right business model and proving that it works and it's repeatable and scalable. So actually Monday, I am turning the keys over to a much better person than myself to run it and take it over day to day. And I'm going to go back and focus on some of our other businesses. But we've built an executive team that sits at the holdco level and looks after all the different business units, and each one of us looks at a different function. So we've got a chief operating officer, human resources, finance, accounting, et cetera. And so Jason and I really sit above all of it and add value where we can.
And then as far as, so let's just take, I know one of the things we're going to talk about here is work-life integration,
Sorry,
being
I think
able to,
I just lost you for a sec. I'm sorry.
that's all right. No, I think what we're going to be talking about today is work-life integration, right? And how to be fully captured and present in the moment. The story I'm telling myself, Logan, is for the everyday dad, right? The everyday guy out there. This is a massive struggle. And even guys who have a 9 to 5, like, right, like they leave their work and they're done for the day, and yet they still can't necessarily switch off. And maybe it's work or maybe it's something else, but something tries to capture our time and attention. But for you, who has all of these things going on, several moving pieces in your professional life, the thing that I know is most important and meaningful for you is being able to switch from work mode to dad mode and husband mode. So how does a very busy man who's in charge of 1,200 heads, 1,200 employees, several different business units, how do you make do?
Yeah, it, it it's a constant evolution for me, Larry, and um, I've found that there's not one single tried and true way that necessarily works for me, but I'm excited to share some of the things that I tell myself. And I, when I was younger, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, there was a badge of honor with grinding and like working all the time and being able to show up at something and talk about how absolutely busy you are and how slammed you are, how many emails and meetings, whatever. And at some point, one of my mentors told me, like, that's juvenile way of thinking. That's a way to prove that you're actually accomplishing something. And what's actually cool is being able to spend time not working, because that means you work smart and you built something sustainable so that you could step away and you could put your phone on airplane mode and not get emails, not get calls, not get text. And that really stuck with me. And I've found over the years, sometimes it's difficult when you run into somebody like, hey, what have you been up to? You've been working a ton. Like, yeah, I've been working as much as I need to. I'm trying to spend more time with the family. It took a minute to get comfortable to say that and not go back to, yeah, I've been working my tail off all hours, putting in as much time as I can.
Hey, do you want to hear an interesting story about another man with 3 kids?
Yeah, I do.
3 boys, and they're actually identically to the age of your 3 boys. Minus the oldest is 10 and not 9. But so we had a guy who joined our what we call the Dad Edge Business Boardroom. So we have 2 different programs. One is the Alliance, which that's more for our guys who are like 9 to 5ers, right? And then we have the Business Boardroom, which is for you have to be a business owner, right? Because as you know and I know, business owners are not better nor worse than 9 to 5ers, but we do have different needs, right? And in particular, the needs that you're talking about, right? So if you're a CEO or a business leader or an executive or something like that, you could literally work 24 hours a day, never shut it off, grind, monotonously, and still not ever cross the finish line, right? But yet we sort of think like, oh, if I get this next thing done or this next thing done or this, then I'll have time or whatever. And that's just you're on this treadmill. A skill that we teach in the business boardroom is exactly what it is that you're talking about. We had a guy who joined us, and I was on a call with him before he joined. And I was like, so tell me about your business. He's like, I just sold my business. He's 40. He's like, I just sold my business. I was like, oh, awesome. Congratulations. I was like, well, tell me about the business. He went on and out of confidentiality, I won't say what business he was in, but he sold it for $42 million. And I was like, I said, why are we talking today? And he just took this deep breath and kind of crumbled. He didn't break down and lose it, but he started to get emotional. And I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? He's like, yeah, $42 million. I've been working my rear end for 15 years for this day. And it's not what I thought it was. I was like, well, yeah, tell me more. What's going on? I have 3 boys. They're 10, 8, and 6. So they're a little bit different than your boys' ages. And I was like, okay. And he said, they don't want much to do with me. They go to mom for everything. And sometimes if I'm in the house, they're looking at me like, why are you here? Or like, they go to her, like they don't really much want anything to do with me. And it's because of the amount of time and effort and my attention has been spent on this day, which is selling my company for $40 million. And he's like, and I was like, so it sounds like this has been tough. And he goes, if I had to do all over again, I wouldn't have done it. He's like, because he goes, the reason I'm talking to you though, and the reason I'm going to join this group is because I still have time. My oldest is 10. I refuse to allow my business to interfere with my connection with my kids any longer. And I realize that I don't have the skills to disconnect from my work in order to be there. And I want to learn. And I was like, I mean, this guy got me in the feels. I'm like, oh my gosh. But that was so telling, right? Because I think anybody would be like, holy cow, $42 million. I just made it. But in this guy's mind was, yeah, I reached the top of the mountain and the view was not what I thought it was going to be. And the journey getting here was not what I thought it was going to be. And now I'm looking, I think he even used this term. I got to the top of this ladder and I realized I got to the top of the wrong one. So this is a battle for guys. I don't care if you're a business owner or if you're a full-time, career guy. This is a battle, right? So for you, 3 boys, you and I were kind of going back and forth, but you have very specific things that you do to make sure that you are disconnected. And I realize that we're not always perfect at this. This is a practice, but you have really specific things that you do, that you follow, rules that you follow, parameters that you follow, boundaries you don't want to cross. what are those for you, and how do you stick to them? How do you stay dedicated to them?
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying it's a practice, because obviously things come up, and you've got to make certain decisions for the long term, and it may not always be what you want it to do. But there are a few things that I really try and focus on. And one of them is just being okay spending time together. And whatever the time is with my children and my wife doesn't need to be special. Everybody knows there's pressures to do all sorts of interesting things, exciting things, big trips. And that's such a small percentage of our life. If you think about the day in and day out of what it means to be a spouse and a parent, and getting really comfortable with not doing big special things, and just maybe sitting on the floor in the basement watching them play Legos. Maybe I'm not even involved, but I'm just there. And if they want to look up every few minutes and show me what they built and tell me why there's 2 engines on the airplane instead of 1, I'm there, and I'm just looking, and I'm just listening. And maybe it's when they're sitting at the breakfast bar and I'm making lunches for the day. I don't maybe have any lessons to give them. Maybe I don't even have anything to talk about, but they just see me there, and I see them there, and they know that I'm present, and I'm supporting whatever it is that they do. And so I talk about this with anybody that'll listen. Like, get comfortable with the mundane, find happiness in the mundane, and you will ultimately find general happiness in your life, because so much of our life is either sitting in traffic or doing dishes, and being okay with that, and know that that time is good time spent with your children, your family. It's pretty freeing.
And it's so simple too, because do you think that a lot of parents, I mean, this goes, I think, for moms too, but I think for dads too, is we delay that gratification because we've got like the big vacation coming up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of I want you to talk a little bit more about this. So I'm gonna lob a question your way, and and then I'm gonna share just a really quick funny story, and I'm gonna let you think about it. But I want you to send a really powerful message to men that rattles the minds and the hearts of men out there who, think that maybe the day to day doesn't matter all that much. We all know it matters, but I don't think we really fully realize how much it matters. Like, so for instance, if I'm sitting on the deck with my son and we're having a conversation, and I'm in my phone, and yes, I'm listening to him, and yes, I'm interacting, but my phone's in my hand, like I'm right now. And what type of message is that sending? Yes, I'm there, but no, I'm not really there. Am I moving the needle? Probably not that much. So I want you to get more granular about how these things move the needle versus like the big stuff, right? Like the Disney trips and the trips to the beach and all this other stuff. Like, it's the everyday, as you call it, like maybe getting very comfortable and intentional in the mundane versus like the big stuff. And while you think about that, we took our boys to Disney at the end of 2020, which, by the way, was quite frankly not the best experience, because at the time there were people carrying around signs yelling at you if your mask wasn't above your nose. And oh my God, it was like, wow. But we did. We had a blast. Our family had never been there. None of us. And we went to Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom. We went to Hollywood Studios. And then we had a couple of down days at the hotel where the pool was. And, you get done with Disney, you spend all this money, and everything was fun and roller coasters and experiences. And we got on the plane, and I kid you not, I asked my little boys and my big ones, like, hey, what was the best part of our vacation? I'm waiting for them to say, oh, it was Animal Kingdom. It was the Avatar ride. It was this, it was that. Can you guess what it was?
Probably something about messing around in the hotel room before bed or something.
It was the hotel pool. The hotel pool. all of them, they were like, it was the hotel pool. And the hotel we stayed at, it wasn't like a 5-star resort. It was like one of those themed ones, but the pool was fine. It wasn't like anything gargantuan or crazy, but it was a large pool, but nothing really special about it. And I was like, the pool was the best part. Are you serious? Like, I just kind of like shook my head and laughed. And I was like, tell me more about that. And it was all about like, we splashed, we played chicken, we dove in, we did cannonballs. Like, we spent, and this was over New Year's Eve too. We went there for New Year's Eve. We celebrated Mason's birthday, which was on January 1st, and like everybody at the pool sang him happy birthday at midnight. And it was the pool. And I'm like, wow. But that was so telling because you spend all this money on all these theme parks and all this other stuff, right? And it was the pool, doing the simplest stuff that was actually, quite frankly, not even really on our radar. We were actually just trying to relax and give our legs a break after walking 40,000 steps the day before. But that was it. But yeah, I would love to know your response to, getting more entrenched in those day-to-days and why they're so important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. We had a very similar one. We took the whole month of July and traveled from San Diego to Seattle by car, seeing friends and everything along the way. And we did some unbelievably spectacular things. And when I asked my kids what their favorite part was, it was chasing the chickens at my friend's house that we stayed at in San Diego.
No. Are you serious? So
Yep.
wait, how many chickens and how long did this last? And what was it like? Give us a picture of what was happening.
Well, he's got a few acres, and by the beach is a beautiful place in Encinitas. And we were in the guest house, and the chicken coop is sort of between the house and the guest house. And during the day, they're allowed to run wild. There's probably 8 or 10 chickens. And my kids thought it was incredible to chase the chicken downs, grab them, kind of move them, see their legs kick. And it was like 3 days of whenever we were at the house,
Yeah.
they wanted to mess with the chickens, which we could do here in Tennessee. But that was something that they really, really thought was special.
That, my friend, is a typical boy right there. My
Yeah.
boys would probably say the exact same thing. Okay. So yeah, and then getting back to like, just the everyday.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think about this quote from The Godfather as sort of something that guides when I think about this time together. And if you remember the scene, Johnny Fontaine goes, The Godfather.
Can I guess it?
Yeah, please.
Can I guess it?
Please.
Sometimes business is just going to have to suffer. Is that it?
No, but that's a good one.
Oh, it's not?
No. So Johnny Fontaine on the wedding day goes and he says he wants this picture. He wants to be in this movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He's
okay.
crying and he's sad sack, and the Godfather slaps him.
Yeah.
He's like, do you spend time with your family? And he says, of course I do. And the Godfather says, good, because any man can't be a real man unless he spends time with his family. And like even 10 years ago, like I saw that and I was like, wow, that book was written 40 years ago, and it was dubbed a mafia movie, but the movie was about family and family dynamics. And I think about that quote a lot because I do think it takes a lot of strength and confidence to be able to put the world away and just be around. You have to be confident in yourself, in your relationships, in your business, friendships, to be able to I'm fine just hanging on the back deck. Whatever the kids are doing, I'm just around. And if they need something, or they want to talk through something, or they have a question, I'm there to answer it, because I truly believe what they want to hear at the end of the day is that I'm supportive of whatever it is that they're into. And it could be the littlest. It could be just taking the trash out together but we're there, and I'm listening to one of them go on about something, and maybe I'm saying, well, that's interesting. How does it make you feel? And they're talking more. But that, like, just absolute presence and no motive.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. I mean, a theme that I'm pulling out from the conversations you have with your boys is you get very curious, right? You get very curious. Like, you don't just say, oh, yeah, cool, awesome. You're like, well, tell me more about that. How did that make you feel, right? I think the more interactions we can have like that, more conversations we can have like that when we get curious and we get deep and we're not necessarily high level, I think we raise a more emotionally intelligent human being, because the more that they can, I mean, think about that. Like, you have a 9-year-old, I have a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old, I would actually identify him as high emotional intelligence, but we talk about his feelings every single day. And the way we do it, one of the ways we do it is when I put him to bed at night, I'm like, tell me something that brought you joy today. Tell me about the best part of your day. Tell me something that brought you happiness. Tell me tell me a story of how you were kind to somebody else today. Something like that, to where I'm digging into something he's proud of, right? And then we get the feeling identified. That made me happy. I felt joy. I felt accomplishment. I felt pride, whatever it is, right? We do the same thing with emotions that are troubling sometimes to us. I'm like, tell me about where you failed today. Tell me something challenging today. How'd that make you feel? And sometimes he'll even course correct me. I'll say, oh man, that must, did that make you sad? He's like, no, it actually made me mad. Like, or it would be vice versa. I'm like, man, that must have made you angry. No, I was actually really sad. So he'll be able to correct me, which I think is awesome. Like a 9-year-old being able to identify, no, this is exactly how I feel. Because if you think about it, we live in a world and a generation of fathers. I think you and I are in this camp. Definitely our fathers, I think, were in this camp. And then I think even our grandfathers were even more in this camp, where it's like they didn't have a ton of emotional. I mean, they were tough as nails. Like our grandfathers, like the Depression, the World Wars. I mean, these guys are made of steel. I mean, they really are. These are tough dudes, right? But I also think they raised probably a generation of our fathers. Some of them are fine, some not. But I think it was like, put your head down, shut up, don't feel your feelings, just get through it, right? And I think when we do that, I'm not saying we coddle people at all. I'm not saying that, but we have an opportunity to teach emotional intelligence. Because if you ask adult men nowadays, like, hey man, what's going on? You all right? No. What's wrong? I don't know. Well, are you upset? Yeah, I'm just pissed. At what? I don't know. I'm just pissed. So sometimes we have like a lot of angry men, but angry is a secondary emotion, usually from something else, whether it's sadness or fear or despair or something. But we don't know that. We just know that we're not happy, but we just can't pinpoint why. But if think about this for a second, like your boys, right? And all three of their really cool names, your boys are going to be they're raised in an environment where they're having these conversations with a dad who is interested in their life, even in the simplest way possible. That probably doesn't take a whole lot of brain power for us to even do, but it's a huge deal to them. Huge deal to them. And because of that, dad is the go-to. Dad is one of the most interesting guys on the planet for me to talk to because he's interested. And we get to have a conversation back and forth where he is genuinely interested in my life and what is going on. And I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to put you in this position. In 10 years, you're going to have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and you said the other one's 5. Is that right?
4,
and a 14-year-old. You'll have 3 teenagers. Keep you continually to do these repetitions day after day, even though it seems like quote unquote mundane and maybe I'm not moving. What do you think that's going to do for your relationship with them when they're 17, 19, 17, and 14?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I like to think 10 and 15 year time horizons. Jess and I believe we're building the foundation for a crowded table. And I'm sure this topic comes up a ton on your podcast.
Dude, building a foundation for a crowded table. I've never heard that. That is a gold quote. Keep going. I just want to stop that because I was like, man, that was a good one.
Yeah, we are committed to being a support system and a part of their life where they will have the freedom and flexibility to do whatever it is that they want to do and pursue. But we want to be around them. We want to share in that. And we want our table to be crowded. We want them to bring their friends, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, whatever it is, to come to our table and sit and share a meal, share stories, drink wine, whatever it is that we're doing. That to me will be the ultimate sign of success. Whether GoDigital IPOs or doesn't, like these three boys, and if they want to come back and sit at our table and share their life and their friend's life with us, then like that's everything.
So I'm ahead of you in those years, right? Because I've got these teenagers. We have a crowded dining room table, and
Yes.
our grocery bill is ridiculous because all the friends come here, they drink all the Gatorades, they eat all of our food, but we're like, and we've actually designed this home and even the backyard into like, we're like, how do we design this home and our backyard where people feel really good about gathering here and connecting? And we've done all kinds of things. But let me ask you this. I want to share another story with you, but because you're on the right track, you are going to have a crowded dinner table if you keep doing what you're doing. When people come up to you, and now I'm in this space where I have teenagers, and I'm looking back on it, I just shake my head. People come up to you and be like, "Oh, Logan, just wait till they're teenagers. They're gonna be so much trouble. They're not gonna want anything to do with you. They're just gonna become pains in the ass." Do you buy into that story?
I hear it, man.
Yeah, we all do, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I would say that, and I try to not make anybody feel bad about the decision they've made, because generally when they're coming to me saying that, their kids are a pain in the ass.
Sure.
And so I try not to make them feel bad, but I say, look, Jess and I are trying to build uh, the framework so that they're not a pain in the ass and they want to be here and we want to be around them and we want to share whatever it is that they're doing and what we're doing, and we're building towards that and we're being conscious about how we're building towards that.
I love that, man. That's when people, my in-laws used to say that. I love my in-laws, by the way. They're super great people. And but they would be like, "Oh, just wait till when they're little, they're just like, oh, like some of the things they do." And my father-in-law, they'd be like, "Just wait till they're teenagers. It gets way worse." And it just never sat well with me hearing that, because I'm always like, no. They also tell me this thing too. They're like, "Oh, getting old sucks. You need to slow down. You need to." I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not the story I'm buying into. Thanks though. But I think that's a real, if people are doing like, so I really want to talk to the men who are listening to this show, who've got kids in that camp. And even if you've got kids that are older, it's still not too late. But if you do these things that Logan is talking about, I'm not saying it's a silver bullet and you'll have these wonderful teenagers. But what I will tell you is it stacks the odds greatly in your favor that your chances of having a crowded dinner table, right, having your kids' friends over, is much greater than not. Jess and I, my Jessica and I, because I have Jessica too, my Jessica, right? We've done these things too. And we sit back and we're like, because we really genuinely appreciate my 15-year-old and 17-year-old. They are really good boys, really good young men, leaders. They're not into vaping. They're not into drinking. They're not into drugs. Like, they are on the straight and narrow. They wrestle, they play football, that one of them's in band. Like, they really got their head screwed on well. And all their friends come here and they love being at home. And Jess and I sit back and we're like, how did this happen? Like, we feel really blessed, but how did it happen? And it happened exactly the way you're talking about it. We did the small things with them on a daily basis, the little things that move the needle, right? The conversations we have with them, the connection we have with them. But it all boiled down to one word, and I think you would agree with me, is our goal here is connection. Connection, connection, connection all day long. Because without connection, and especially as our kids get older, I had one podcast guest tell me this, When you have a teenager, if you do not have connection, you have zero influence. You can talk all day long about how you should do something, you shouldn't do something. Your kid won't care. If they don't have a connection to you, they don't care. They're going to go do their own thing. If you got a connection with them, that's a very different story. Do you mind if we segue to marriage?
Please.
So I would love to hear how you and Jessica go about making sure your marriage stays on point, because we see this also with high-level entrepreneurs, right? Like their business requires a crap ton of bandwidth from them. And being a father to them is really important. And sometimes even not knowing or even meaning, there's no sinister or sadistic thing. It just sort of happens. We put that relationship on the back burner. Logan, I get the sense from you that your relationship with Jess is probably pretty good, but that didn't happen by accident. I'd love for you to give us some details around that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a little bit unfortunate, but it led to something good. I wasn't always good. I wasn't always thinking about the future and the relationships, and I mostly blamed everything on the business and its nascency, and I'm stressed because I'm working all the time. I'm upset because I'm working all the time. And so I think we created a great partnership, and she was kind of managing the two little babies at the time, Declan and McCoy, and I was trying to build this business, and we became partners. And over a period of time, we had this awakening of like, this is not what we intended to build. We weren't meant to do this, each one of us in our own lane. And I knew that I needed to change what my priorities were, because I would have ended up like your buddy that sold his business for $40 million and realized he got to the top of the wrong ladder. And I'm fortunate enough to have great mentors around me to help me see that years and years ago. And my priorities really shifted at that point, to making sure that I was cultivating that relationship and showing up in a way that would let Jess show up her best. And we supported each other in that way. And if we each give everything to the other, right, then neither of us have to sleep in the mud, like from Forrest Gump, right? You remember that scene where he's like, look, you lean up against me and I'll lean right up against you. And that way we don't have to sleep in the mud.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like you got to sleep in the mud, but we really have turned over to each other and are focused on ensuring that that bond is rock solid, so that we can go create these connections and build a crowded table. And sometimes I'll tell the boys, we'll all be together and be like, look, y'all, mom's the priority. Right now, your mom is my priority. And I'm going to focus on that, because at some point y'all are going to have your own house, and her and I are going to be together, and we need to be as strong as possible.
Do you view your relationship with Jessica, or is it Jess or Jess? Jessica or Jess?
It's kind of anything.
Doesn't matter. Okay. Do you view your relationship as like, hey, mom and I are the foundation, and then it's you guys? And I'm not saying that like, oh, well, like we know you just cut a finger off, but me and mom have a date night. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, do you view the priority as like, okay, we're married first and we're parents second, or we're parents first and married second?
We go married first, parents second.
What advice would you? So I put an Instagram reel out there that we feel the same, and it got a lot of comments. I think it was one of those posts that like it had like 2,500 comments, right? And 90% of them were like, yeah, for all these reasons, right? You're the foundation of the family. It's got to be on point. Without marriage, what are we teaching our kid? Yada, yada, yada. And then there was like some haters, right? Like, no, kids have to come first before marriage. And I can see where people get caught up in that. But what do you think the dangers are, the pitfalls that people don't see, is if it's all about the kids and we're second?
We could have a podcast on that. I think a big part of it for Jess and I is modeling behavior in a relationship.
Yep.
And first and foremost, they see what a very healthy relationship looks like, and what it means when her and I disagree on something, and how we handle and resolve that in front of them, and how we don't say mean or hateful things if we disagree. And so that would be primarily our goal, is to show them what healthy looks like, and can take that away and see it in real time. This sounds silly, but we try to model a ton of stuff. I try to floss my teeth in front of them. I'll walk into their bedroom while I'm flossing my teeth, and I won't say like, "Hey, look at me," but if I've done it their whole life. If they don't end up being flossers, I don't know what's wrong. But we do the same with exercise and healthy food. It's not like I say you have to eat these green beans, but I eat them, and I eat them because it's growing food. This food makes you grow.
100%. I love that. So I'm not discounting or blasting people who put their kids first, because quite frankly, I think it's just a mindset of like, well, isn't that wrong if I do that? Because people feel like, well, I'm not a very noble person if I'm not putting my kids first. But at the same time, what are we missing if we're not putting that marriage first? So I agree with you. Jessica and I have this philosophy that probably you and Jess have. My philosophy is this: best lessons in life are caught, not taught. You've emulated that perfectly. But the other thing too is that Jess and I, we've sat down and we've talked about this. We're like, listen, there's so many marriages out there where people have zero relationship skills. They have no idea what to do. And a lot of it is a blueprint of like how they grew up watching their parents operate. If you ask most people, what were your parents like? Oh, they were divorced, or they stayed together, but they really weren't like into each other. They just kind of like parented together. Like there's all kinds of different stories, but very rarely do I ever hear, oh my gosh, my parents were so in love with each other. I think there's a lot of benefits that go into feeding that relationship. Jess and I agree that I am a walking, talking example of this is how you treat a woman. This is how you talk to a woman. This is how you listen to a woman. This is how you are affectionate with a woman, right? You love their mom. That is going to make your kids feel insanely safe being in your environment. Like if they see that loving, if you really want to make your kids feel unsafe, have a disconnected marriage. They won't ever say it out loud because they can't really articulate it, but they're like, this doesn't feel really great in my house, but they can't really pinpoint why or how. So I think we've got to, and Jessica, my wife, is like, I need to be the example of what these boys are going to tolerate from a woman. Like if I treat you terribly, like that's going to be the bar that they have for relationships. But if I treat you with respect and appreciation, and I talk to you in certain ways, and that's setting the bar. And luckily my boys, my two older ones, they're in the dating world, right? And it blows my mind. Like some of the girls that have come by and they're beautiful, and then I don't see them again. I'm like, what happened? And they're like, she was a pain in the rear end. Like she was like disrespectful, or she would do this, or I don't know. I'm not really into that. I think that's awesome, because like, I think that's probably their way of like, I've seen what good looks like and I'm not tolerating this. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, well said, Larry. I'm gonna run this back whenever you post it, and rewatch that. That's very
Yeah.
well said.
Well, let me ask you this: as we, I want you to talk a little bit about devices too, because I know that was part of the things we're talking about. Like this thing right here, right? It's an incredible piece of tech, and I'm holding up my phone, and it is a window to the world that can connect us, and it can also radically disconnect us. And being an entrepreneur, like this thing can be in your pocket 24/7 and you still can't respond to everybody. But one of the things that you're pretty cognizant of, and again, I know it's a practice, but it's devices. And I want you to tell us about that.
Yeah, Jess and I are working really hard to not make devices taboo, where they're in a position where that's all they want, because we continue to say no. So what we've tried to set up is specific time on the device, but be even more specific about what exactly they get to do on the device at that time. So there'll be like full free time, right? 30 minutes. You can pretty much do whatever you want except go on YouTube. And that's whether they play a game, they watch a show, whatever, play, doesn't matter. Or there's like, you get an hour, but it's only a learning app. Or you get an hour, but it's only an audiobook. And then we work to do full device free things, right? Like, let's go for a bike ride. And I'll be real specific. Like, the phone is not coming. Like, mom and I won't have our phones on us. And I really like to hunt. I'm teaching the boys how to hunt and all about it. Like, we don't bring devices when we go do that. And I don't just say no devices allowed. And here's the reason. We're trying to focus. We're trying to watch. We're trying to see if the deer move. Like, turkey will see you move with your phone, right? And so building things that we all like to do together that don't require technology, because if we let it, tech can be involved in everything. And in some ways it's a real beautiful thing, but they also need to know how to live without it. And instead of just saying, no tech, it's like, well, let's do something that's not a tech thing.
Mm. So it's not necessarily the absence of, but replacing it with something better and upgraded.
Yeah. We're really trying to be cognizant lately of not just saying no, but being specific about why and the reasons around it.
Yeah. I love that, man. I mean, you've got Logan, the story I'm telling myself is you really don't need to teach your kids how to turkey hunt, because apparently they can catch chickens on foot. So they can just go and just go tackle a turkey and bring it back.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure, I want to give you a couple minutes here to just share with the men, just anything that you'd like to promote, or anything that you're doing to help men out, or even if it's through your company in some way, shape, or form. But also for people to connect with you and find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing.
Sure, absolutely. I think with all of our business, like we talked about earlier, there's a passion point, and for the most part, most of them are very family oriented. With our Eastern Mountain Sports, we have 46 retail locations along the Northeast, but also an online presence worldwide. Everything we do is about the family and the outdoors and building and making memories, doing things together in nature, around, we call it the Eastern Mountain Way, and making sure that you get into the hills and into the water and all the things that make you happy and reconnect as a family. It's critically important to us as we build this big business, to make sure we're doing it in the right way and that is sustainable and for good middle class families.
That's so cool, man. And where can people find you if they want to connect?
I'm on Instagram, I think it's Logan Mulvey.
All right. We'll have all the links in the show notes for you guys. Not a problem. By the way, Logan, do you have a Mastiff by chance?
No, I have 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Okay. I hear the one barking in the background, and my assistant, she's got a Mastiff. He's 8 years old, and his name's Cairo, and he literally sounds exactly like your dogs. Very cool. Well, hey, gentlemen, you're not going to have to look very far if you want to connect with Logan. He just gave us gold today. One of the quotes that I just want to really ring true is, build a foundation where your dining room table will be crowded for years to come. That's an incredible thing. Connection is a foundation. Also, that grinding, working 24/7, it's a really juvenile way to project that we're busy, right? Putting our marriage first before our kids, being the example. I even love the simple example of flossing. Like I'm the same as you. I love to purposely do things in front of my kids that I want them to do versus telling them how to do it. And I love how you also talked us through how devices aren't necessarily taboo, but not necessarily no devices, but let's do something better, something that's connecting and upgrading. So, Logan, thanks for coming on today. This was so cool, man, to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. And I'm eager to follow in your journey and learn from the community you built.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Gentlemen, head on over to thedadedge.com/448 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/448. You want to connect with Logan? We'll have all the links in the show notes. Obviously, an incredible individual. And Yeah, we'll have all those in there for you. Again, thedadedge.com/448. Logan, thank you again. Really appreciate you. Honor you with all my heart for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us today, brother.
We'll see you. Be good.
You bet. Gentlemen, go out and live legendary. Take care.